When I think of the word hood, I think of a person, a place, and perhaps even a thing. I'm Sir Creepsta, and welcome to Muhlenberg County Ghost Stories from the Hood. Tonight's tale of terror is entitled House of Ghosts and Demons Part 2, Teresa's Demon. Up to this point, Mr. Hubert's presence had been clearly felt by the entire family. But to be honest, it really didn't appear to bother any of them much at all. By now, they had grown used to the frequent scares he would bestow on the family, especially with the kids. It wasn't until the two younger brothers, who were 15 and 13 at the time, received a surprise gift from their older brother, who no longer lived at home, that things would drastically change for the worst. Filled with joy and excitement, the brothers fled to their room to unveil what the mystery package contained. But before I go any further, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And also, don't forget to click on the little bell icon so that you can stay in the loop and be notified each and every time I upload a new video. With that being said, sit back, relax, grab some snacks, and be terrified by yet another Muhlenberg County ghost story from the Hood. Once the brothers got into their bedroom, they hurriedly ripped open the package to see what had been gifted to them by their older brother. And to their surprise, it was some sort of board game, they both thought. The board was filled with letters of the alphabet, as well as numbers. There was also some sort of strange shaped object, which was known as a planchette, that was to be used with the board game. Not knowing exactly how to use the board itself, they nonchalantly tossed it to the side of their room, simultaneously both feeling very disappointed that it wasn't something that either of them was familiar with. Time passed by with neither of the boys even attempting to play with this strange, unknown game. One day, while at school, the older brother recalled that he had mentioned the strange gift to one of his classmates. And after a brief description of the board game, his friend immediately knew what the gift was. And he told the older brother that it was called a Ouija board, and that it was supposedly used when attempting to make contact with the ghosts or spirits of loved ones that had passed away. But the friend also cautioned them to be very careful when using this game, for it has been known to open doors that could not be closed. Not fully aware of what they had gotten their hands on, the older brother told me that one night, just for kicks, he, his younger brother, as well as their older sister, all decided to see if they could make contact with a loved one that had passed away several years prior to their receiving the Ouija board. So they patiently waited until their parents had fallen fast asleep, and then they got the board game out from under their bed. The older brother told me that the friend at school who had told him about the board had also told him vaguely how he should go about using the board game, telling him to be sure that it was dark in the room of choice, and to also light some candles, and then place the object that was known as the planchette onto the board, at that time placing the tips of their fingers on it, as they went about attempting to make contact with their dead relative. And according to my friend, that's exactly what he and his siblings did. Then he and his brother went about asking the board an assortment of questions regarding their deceased relative. After nearly half an hour of doing this, my friend told me that he and his siblings had grown bored of the game, seeing that nothing appeared to be happening in their response to their questions. But as they were about to put the game away, the younger brother asked the game one last question, which was for it to reveal to them the name of the ghost that had been haunting their house for months. Not truly expecting any kind of response, the older brother claimed that the planchette moved all by itself. As it went about, spelling out the name of the letters H-U-B. But before it would finish spelling out the name, they heard a knock at their door. It was their mother, who had overheard them in the room talking. She told them to stop whatever it was that they were doing and to take their butts to bed. So they hurriedly blew out the candles, put the game away, and did exactly what their mother had asked them to do. The brother's sister was unfortunately mentally challenged and didn't really understand anything about the Ouija board. All she knew was that it happened to be some sort of game that her brothers had invited her to join along them to play, to pass the time away. One day the older brother told me that he and his brother had been in the park playing with the rest of the kids when they would return home only to find Teresa in her bedroom attempting to play with the game by herself. The older brother said that he calmly blew out the candles and told his sister that the game required all three of them to play it at the same time in order for it to work, and that he would be sure to include her in the next time that they decided to use it. Teresa happily nodded her head and gave the game back to the older brother to put away. A few weeks passed by without any incident from Mr. Hubert or anything. It wasn't until late one night when the younger brother told me that he had grown hungry and had decided to go into the kitchen and see what he could find to snack on when things would start to drastically change around the house. As he was about to pass his sister's room, he briefly thought that he overheard her in the room talking to someone. So out of curiosity, he slowly opened her door to look in on her, only to find her in her bed fast asleep. He also noticed that for some reason, Teresa's room seemed to have been much cooler than any other parts of the house. These occurrences baffled him, to say the least, for he knew that he had heard her speaking to someone. But how could this be, if she was fast asleep? He was also curious of why her room felt so much cooler than the rest of the house. By being half asleep, he just shook it off, grabbed his snack, and went back to bed. Unknowing to he and his brother at that time, this was only the start of the nightmarish experiences that were to come involving their older sister. Because of their sister's mental challenges, she was unable to speak clearly, nor could she stand upright like normal people do. She always had a slight hump in her back whenever she walked. As time went on, the boys would often hear their sister speaking to someone while in her cold room, only to look in on her and find no one there. At first, they thought it was just old Mr. Hubert being the trickster ghost that he always had. It wasn't until the older of the two brothers noticed what he thought to be more than one shadow figure lurking in their hallway, as well as several unexplained, disembodied voices coming from their sister's room, and the sudden changes in their sister's attitude towards them, as well as their parents, that he knew something was definitely not normal in this house. What had always been a very loving, kind, and cheerful girl, their sister began to show signs of anger and aggression towards everyone in the family. Her voice mysteriously began to seem deeper and more pronounced at times, not even sounding like herself at all. Then the older brother also stated, noticing that he suddenly changed the temperatures in the sister's room. To the both of them, it always seemed to be several degrees cooler than any other part of the house for some reason. Still, they had no idea that the Ouija board played any type of role in these sudden changes with their sister or her room. It wasn't until the night that their sister would get up out of her bed, go into their parents' room, viciously stomping her feet as she walked, stand upright and yell out to them in a deep, horrifying voice, demanding them to get out of my house. that they knew something was definitely wrong with Teresa and their home. This sudden outburst from Teresa prompted her father to rush her to the ER, because out of all the years living there in the house, she had never once stood upright, nor spoke in the tone of voice that she did then. But by the time they had arrived at the hospital, their sister had completely gone back to being normal, leaving the doctor with no explanation to give the parents for what could have happened to Teresa. So their father went about asking everyone in the house once he got back home about any sudden changes that had taken place over the past few months. And the only thing that could come to mind was that it had to have been something to do with the Ouija board the brothers told their father that they had received from their older brother. Upon hearing this devastating news, their father asked to see the board. And without hesitating, he took it out in the backyard, placed it into a trash can, and burned it to a crisp. Not realizing it at the time, this would be a huge mistake on his part, and it would later on be something that would come back to haunt the occupants of the house in more ways than one could ever imagine. Stay tuned for part 3 coming on October 31st. I'm Sir Creepsta, and until next time, stay terrified.